I'm in a position where I can make a difference in my community. And this is my community. I take ownership of it, right? I love this place. I mean, it's who I'm at, who I am. I was born and raised here. Sometimes we'll fall for the next shiny object, which can sometimes lead to disaster. You don't have to have really bad. You can have good and still do a whole heck of a lot better. And that's what I think I'm going to bring to the table.
So welcome back to the Grindcast. Today we're sitting down with Councilman Jimmie Hughes, longtime St. George City Council member, local business owner, rancher, and now a candidate for mayor. Jimmie has deep roots in our community, from running Hughes Mortuary with his wife Tani to serving on multiple boards that shape the future of our city. We're going to talk about his vision for St. George, how he'd lead as mayor, and get to know the person behind the campaign. Councilman Hughes, thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
All right, we appreciate you for coming on.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the man, Jimmie Hughes. Tell us a little bit about the man here.
Well, I don't know. It might not be as deep as you want it to be, but
As long as it's not 6 feet deep.
yeah, very good. Yeah, very good. So born and raised right here in St. George. Graduated from Dixie High School. Did a little bit of time at then Dixie State University before I served an LDS mission in Brazil. Came back from that and got a job as a real estate appraiser and actually moved to California, Southern California. So spent about 3 or 4 years in Southern California, and then I ended up in Salt Lake where I met my wife, Tani, and we started our family in Salt Lake, built our first home, and eventually we're able to move back here to St. George. So we've been back for about 22 years now, back to St. George, where I was able to take over I bought the family ranch from my stepfather, and that's just kind of in my blood. So,
And that's along the Arizona Strip.
yeah, actually, we border the Grand Canyon. So
Oh, wow.
Awesome.
there's a great place to see the Grand Canyon. It's kind of remote. It's called Tuip, or the Toro Rimp Overlook.
Okay.
I border the park right there.
Wow.
So it's not too far, but it's really rough road. So it takes you a minute to get there, but
Gorgeous area.
very, very pretty. And
Yeah.
I do that for relaxation, believe it or not.
Yeah.
Hard work's good relaxation. So we have 5 children, all of which are still in St. George. 2 of them are married, and I got 3 grandsons.
Nice.
So, and then my wife and I run the mortuary, which is a second career for me.
Yep.
My first career was in real estate appraising and mortgage lending. I started that in Southern California. They moved me to Salt Lake, and then actually back to St. George, where I was
So interesting.
able to come home.
Okay.
So
Very awesome.
that's kind of me in a nutshell.
Yes, I like it. So you've spent we've got a couple different areas that just we want to get through here, and
Mhm.
I know we're limited on time, and I can tell we're gonna have a fun conversation. So time's gonna fly by, right?
Yeah.
Which is good.
You have to tell me to be quiet.
So you've spent much of your life in St. George, from growing up here to running a business, raising a family. How has that shaped your vision for the city's future?
Well, that's why I have the unique perspective of being able to understand why so many people are coming to St. George. I mean, I guess that's our biggest issue, or our number one thing that people talk about is our growth. I mean, St. George is by far more move-ins than it is natives like myself. And being able to go and live in California and see what that's like versus what we have here in Southern Utah gives me a unique perspective of what maybe some things we don't want to emulate from other places, and maybe some things that we could incorporate, and really to understand how lucky we are to live here in this area. So I think my life experience of being able to see some of that has helped shape my opinion on things that we should incorporate here in the city. So
I love that. So you and your wife run Hughes Mortuary, and then the cattle ranch we just talked about. So those are 2 very different businesses.
Yes.
What lessons would you say from those experiences influence how you lead and how you make decisions?
First and foremost is hard work. Growing up on a ranch, that's what you learn is hard work. I would say, contrary to what most people think about, mortuary, everybody thinks that's such a good business, which it is. I mean, it's a good business. I wouldn't like you, but there's a lot of work involved. And it's a 24/7 business. Never sleeps. I mean, you've got to be available at all times. So number one would be hard work, and then secondly, owning a business, you have to be able to budget. Same with on the ranch. I mean, On a ranch, you get all your income at once, and then you have to learn how to make sure that money lasts throughout the year. So budgeting is another thing that I think I've learned through my experience on the ranch and owning a business. So
I think that's something important too with business, because if you don't manage money properly, the business fails, right?
yeah,
It's not like you can just go to your customers and say, "You owe us more money,"
yeah.
just because.
Yeah, and really in city government, we're kind of running. Oh, not kind of. We're running a business, really. I mean, the city is a business. We have a board of directors, which would be the city council, chairman of the board, which would be the mayor, which is what I'm running for now. And then we have our employees that are there to serve the customers, which are the citizens of St. George. So
Right.
really is a big business. In fact, when you make a city, you're incorporated.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of similarities there from running a business to trying to run a city.
And I think you have to manage those expenses and be aware of the revenue that's coming in, and you can't just go ask the citizens for more revenue just for the heck of it. right?
Perfect.
So
Yeah.
I understand that.
So, what made you become a councilman in the first place?
Um, so there were so it starts way back. When I was younger, there was an issue that happened across the street from where I lived with the hospital, actually. And a neighborhood gathered together and they wanted to make a speech to the city council. For some reason, as a young person, they asked me to give that speech. I don't know if they thought it'd be effective because a young kid was there. I never have forgotten that, and the council people sitting up on the dais and being told those people are going to make the decision. I think that was stuck in the back of my head. Moved back to St. George, was complaining, and my two oldest boys were saying, "Well, why don't you do something, Dad? Why don't you get on the city council?" It was time to sign up for city council, so we actually marched up to City Hall with my two boys. We paid our $50, and I signed up to run for city council the first time. Now I lost that first time, so it wasn't all roses, but 2 years later I ran again and won, and here I am. What, 14 years later?
Yeah.
So
That's got to be great for your kids too, for them to make a suggestion like that, and they're okay.
yeah.
I'm gonna go and try this.
So I think I was just teaching. At first I was just trying to teach my sons a lesson in civics,
Yeah.
and it ended up being yeah. I like I say, I've been there for 14 years now. But when I finish my term, which I'm hoping not to finish my term, um, it'll be 16 years. So
Yeah.
But this fall will be 14 years. So no,
It's
it's been
definitely a
good.
long time.
On your website, you describe your leadership style as steady and common sense. So, can you give an example of a tough council decision where you feel that approach made a difference?
Well, so we don't always get what we want as council people, but
don't?
no, no. So there are five of us, and it takes three. Um, but I think a lot of it just comes down to if we have principles that we are stay steady on, and we're not just saying, okay, we're going to go with whatever the wind's blowing, then that helps us to maintain some what I use the word steadiness. So one of the things that I think of is our master plan when we talk about our community. We have a master plan that we've spent a lot of time developing, and we've gotten a lot of community input, and it helps us to understand what we want to be when we grow up. As we move forward, there's going to be times when people want to change that, which is okay from time to time. But if we don't have that steadiness that says, okay, we know what our plan is, we know what we want to be when we grow up, and we don't stick to that, then sometimes we'll fall for the next shiny object, which can sometimes lead to disaster. So overall, that's how I would couch that, is that we want to we want to be able to have to look into the horizon and see the long game and stay steady in that. So that's kind of what I mean when I say that.
So that makes sense. And I think even just being a business owner, like you have to have a vision of where you're going. Otherwise, you just have this path that just moves left to right all the time, right? And you have to have kind of an idea. And sometimes you got to roll with the punches,
Right.
but at the same time, you have to have this end goal in mind, but understanding that it may change as you learn more. That's just how business is.
And that's true. And we can't say we can't have a little bit of flexibility either, because
Mhm.
times do change and things change, and we have to be able to be flexible enough to step back and say, hey, that's not the way it is anymore. I mean, when we talk about things like AI, I mean, that's changing how we look at everything. And so we have to be able to adapt to some of those things as well. So steadiness doesn't mean that we have blinders on or not able to look at what progress is doing and make some changes. But we can't just be saying, hey, let's go willy nilly wherever we go.
Mhm.
There's a country song that says you got to stand for something or you're fall for anything.
Yeah.
So
Oh, okay.
Give 'em.
I like that.
yeah.
So how do you see the role of mayor differing from that of a council member, and how would you lead differently in that position?
Great question. So in St. George, the mayor's position is what we call a weak mayor. So the mayor does not vote. The mayor has no veto power. So the mayor only votes in case of a tie. So the way I see the role of the mayor is almost like a coach, where you have the council, which is the team, and you're trying to, what I want to do is be able to take the wisdom and things that I've learned, create an atmosphere where the council, who are going to be the people that vote, are able to ask questions freely and not be afraid of repercussion politically or anything like that. That they will be able to know they're getting the information that they need up front. That we're not trying to steer them in any direction, but we're trying to get all the best information so they can make a good decision. And I can be a mentor and a coach. And then secondly is besides the coach, you're a cheerleader for the team. We're advocating for everything St. George, and that's what the mayor does. Now, of course, there's going to be some times from time to time where the mayor's going to have to vote because there's a tie. That should be very rare though, because you got 5 council people. There's something important. You put that vote off until the whole quorum is there, versus having votes when there's only 4 of them there. If you can avoid that, we should avoid that. So. But that's how I see it, as a mentor, a coach, and a cheerleader for everything for the city. So the mayor, it's an important role in a couple of areas. That the mayor is kind of the figurehead who's going to be meeting with different partners, maybe our federal partners or our state partners or our funding, someone we're trying to get grant money from. So it's important that the mayor is there and present and advocating for the city. So that's the role difference besides being a council member, where you're one of the 5 people that vote. um, then there's, if you want to say it this way, I would be giving up
Voting power.
power. Yeah, really power, if you want to use that word, by going from being a council member to the mayor, because I will lose that 1 in 5 votes. So
Got it.
But gain influence.
yeah, but they gain some influence in that. I'm hoping to be able to, and I think I have a good enough rapport with the council, and I've had enough experience that I can be able to give them good information, and they'll trust that that's good information, and then be able to make good decisions. So
Awesome. St. George is one of the fastest growing cities in the country, and you've mentioned that you'll welcome. I took this from your website, but welcome new opportunities while protecting the character, charm, and livability of St. George. So I want to ask you, what do you think that the city is doing well to manage growth, and where would we need to improve?
So I would go back first to that master plan. We've tried to say, hey, we know what we're going to be when we grow up. In fact, we know our population, by estimates, is going to be somewhere around 300,000. That sounds like a lot when you figure we're about 110, 15 right now. Um, but that master plan tells us, that we can get there, and how we get there, and if we follow that, then we're going to be fine. So the growth is both a blessing and a curse. Um, and that's one of the biggest complaints that I hear as I'm out campaigning is, what are you doing to this city? You know, you're just this unchecked growth, which is not quite true, but there's this feeling that once you've moved here, which a lot of people that are complaining are ones that have moved here in the last 10, 15, or even 5 years. And now that they're here, it's like, okay, this is an ideal place. No more.
I'm here. I don't
Yeah.
want anybody else to move. Don't tell anybody about this.
So it's
place, right?
just me.
Ever
You
since
can't-
I've been on the council, I've heard that. And I always like to say, okay, when did you come here? Right. Because I've been here since, this is going to date me, I've been here since 1970. There were, like 7,500 people here at that point.
Wow.
And it was a pretty ideal place to grow up. So are you part of the problem? And so we have to look at that and be realistic about it. And look, as St. Georgeites, we've always been very welcoming to people that want to move here. And I think that's not going to change. The key is, how do we maintain that character and charm? And I don't know that I have all the answers to that, but the biggest thing we have to remember is we're a community, and that word community can mean a lot of things to a lot of people. But really, what the history of St. George is, it's been that we work together. And part of that too is we have to not throw out some of our traditions. We have some, like, there's not a lot of people maybe that are rodeo people, but we have the Dixie Roundup coming up. that's just a big community tradition. And there's a lot of people that go to that rodeo that aren't necessarily rodeo fans, but it's a community gathering. It's a place where we come together and see people we haven't seen all year long. And so I think, and there's the marathon, there's some legacy events like that we do here that brings us together as a community. And I think that we have to maintain those. Also, we have great volunteers here. We're a community that volunteers a lot. How do we promote that? How do we keep that going so we still have that sense of community, even though we're going to be growing to more of a metropolitan area?
Right.
That's the trick. Are we going to be able to maintain that? Do I know all the answers? I don't know, but we want to give it heck and try to do that. Try to maintain that, what keeps us a community. I think even little things like, the Dixie on the Hill. I mean, not everybody knows the history of that, but to have it there is a nod towards the history of that Dixie and what we call the Dixie spirit, which is just community spirit,
Sure.
right? Of working together. It's a nod to that, and it reminds us that we are a community.
Yeah.
So we just have to keep pointing back to that and remembering that we are a community.
Yeah.
Is what I'm hoping.
I would say along those lines, I think one of the fears of the people is, like, especially the ones that come from California, is like, how do you keep crime in check?
Yeah.
So with all the growth, you've got drugs, you've got, violent crimes,
Mhm.
like,
And there's no question that as you grow, there's going to be an increase in crime just because of the
The
population
numbers,
growth,
yeah.
just the numbers. Our goal here in St. George has always been, is it the Marines' motto is no better friend and no worse enemy? Uh, our police department, that's what we want. We want them to be no better friend. They're there to protect and
Mhm.
serve. They're going to serve our
Mhm.
community, but we want them to be the worst enemy of criminals.
Mhm.
And we want to make sure they have the equipment. And we've done a very good job of this at St. George's, make sure they have all the equipment they need, the cutting edge technology that goes from radios to guns to vehicles to be able to do their job to the best of their ability. We had just purchased that new armored vehicle that they had to use on the incident down in Little Valley with the shooting and the fire.
Yeah.
That vehicle saved police officers' lives.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the windshield got cracked. We had to replace the windshield because of the bullet strikes, but it did its job. And so we've always done a very good job of that. And so that is my number one concern
Mhm.
is that criminal element. When we hear of shootings, we can give that no rest.
Tolerance.
No tolerance. We have to be all over that.
Yeah.
And that's what my goal is.
Yeah, I mean, so my ex-husband was a police officer in California,
Mhm.
and I was in dispatch. So, um, it's crazy what happens behind the scenes, but I think the biggest difference that's made is when the city council and the mayor stand behind the police versus being against them.
Yes.
And I know sometimes that's not the favored opinion depending on the politics, but I think it's critical for keeping crime in check and making sure that there are very harsh punishments for not letting people get off
Yeah.
easy.
And I'd like to say I would do that differently than the other candidates or anybody else, but I think our council and even the current mayor, we would all agree that that's a 100% has to be very, very important. We have to keep on that. And we've invested heavily in our police officers, including increasing pay and making sure they have what they need.
Okay.
And the same with fire. So
Yeah, I think that's great. I think when you have the increase that we're having, I mean, it's inevitable that there are going to be, crime is going to increase a little bit as well. But I don't know. I've found just a lot of the people that I've met that have come here have chosen it because of how they feel safe,
safe.
and they go, people are so nice here,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've experienced this as well, and that was a big thing of what led me here. In my neighborhood, when I'm driving, there's all the people that are just walking around and waving.
Yeah.
And I went back up to Salt Lake to visit my parents before they moved down, and I got used to that. So I'm waving, and then people would kind of look at me, "What are you doing?"
What?
It's
Exactly.
weirdo. Oh, and I've kind of grown accustomed to it now, So I see.
Don't lose that.
I know. I don't want to. No,
That's cool.
I like it. I like the idea of preserving some of that charm that's here, because I think that's why a lot of us chose this place. And I think if there's a lot of people, or a high percentage of people that choose it for that reason, they're going to want to maintain it.
Yeah.
But you're going to have some bad actors who just kind of come in
Yeah.
and disrupt it. And
Yeah.
there's got to be a way to handle those.
A lot of people that I've talked to that have moved here bring that same idea with them. I think that's one of our blessings is the people that are moving here actually have that same mindset is that They came here, like what you're saying, because it's a friendly place and they want to keep it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm hopeful with that.
And I've found, and maybe this helps, but I've found that just there seems to be more people that have things in common with one another. For example, when I lived in Salt Lake, when I was in or Sandy, in my neighborhood, I knew a lot of the neighbors, but there wasn't any of them that I had anything in common with.
Yeah.
And then I move out here, and we like hiking and mountain biking and doing all the outdoor stuff. And then I go to meet all my neighbors, and they're like, we like all that same stuff too. And at the next door neighbor, we like all that same stuff too. Like everybody likes that. That's why we moved here.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of helped strengthen that community feel, because it's like now we have all these other people that are into the same things.
Yeah.
And it was amazing.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big, that attracts other like-minded people that want to be into those same things.
You live here, you better like the outdoors.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the heat.
And they'd be okay with it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
The photo days when you have to wear a full suit. And that might be a little bit different, right?
Yeah.
So, of course, with the growth, water is always a concern in southern Utah. What specific policies or initiatives do you believe will make the biggest impact on conservation and sustainability? If we hit that 300,000 that you mentioned, I should say when, not if, but
Right.
when, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to happen at some point.
So conservation is key. And I think what we need to do with conservation is you got to change the conversation a little bit. Ever since I was a little kid, we were just taught that's what you do with water, right? You just conserve water. Even before we had this population growth, that's just a way of life in St. George, is we just conserve. Even if it's a wet year and we have lots of rain and the reservoirs are full, you don't just leave the tap running. I mean, my mother would freak out if you weren't actively washing your hands. If you turned around to grab the towel and hadn't turned the tap off, you're in trouble, because that's just what we were taught. So I think the conversation has gotten to where we've said, you save water so we can let someone else have it. And that's not necessarily the message that we want to convey, or the message that's really trying to be conveyed. So we need to change that conversation a little bit. And part of that's just being a little more upfront about what our water situation is. One day we hear that we're out of water. The next day we see a golf course go in, right? Yeah, we've all heard that. And so we've got to change the conversation by being a little more transparent about what the water situation is. And that, oh, yes, we do have water sufficient. I mean, we're planning out and making sure we have water for the growth that we are experiencing. There's no doubt about it. But changes in weather patterns do make it a little more difficult on some years than others to make sure we have the storage possible. A big key to that is, and a policy that I would keep advocating for, and maybe we're a little bit slow to the game, but we're doing it now, is more reservoirs. I mean, when we do get our water here, it comes all at once, right? Either it comes from winter snowpack if we get some in the mountains, or we get the storms, and then it all comes at once, and we might get flooded. So we just got to have the reservoirs for it. And there's been the Warner Valley Reservoir has been in the talk since the end of World War II. And then our graveyard wash that we still haven't got the permits for, is taking way too long. So more storage is a big key. And then have the honest conversations about conservation and what it means. It doesn't mean that we're running out of water tomorrow. It means that we want to be able to have water for tomorrow at a cheaper rate, because that's what conservation really does, is it makes it easier to deliver the water. So especially in a drier year when maybe the reservoirs aren't as full, and then we just have to start pulling water from other places. We're having to start running the pumps more when we have to use the wells. We have so many different sources of water. Now they all do come out of the one basin, but we've got wells, we've got springs, all those things. We got reservoirs. So I think we're headed in the right direction. We just got to have a better conversation about it, so that the general public doesn't have to feel like, wait a second, are they just saving the water for somebody with lots of money? I get that sentiment. I mean, because sometimes that's what it seems like. So we just need to have a better conversation and more transparent.
So one of the things you said was the permits. Like, what is involved with that process, and why wouldn't it be a smoother experience?
So we're surrounded by, and most of our land around here is government land. It's BLM land, right? So we have to have permits to be able to do some of this stuff. Even if we own the land, sometimes it's the access to the land. Sometimes it's the getting the water to the reservoir, the rights of way for that. You have to go through all that. And our federal government permitting process has become a little bit and cumbersome. Like some of the things that we have to do have gotten to be a little ridiculous. Now, I know there's some opposition, a point not necessarily have to do with water, but the Northern Corridor. Totally approved by Congress. We had congressional hearings here in St. George that I was part of, totally approved, and then gets shut down by administrative action and a lawsuit.
Can you explain that a little bit more just for people who don't know what that is?
So about the Northern Corridor?
Yeah.
So the Northern Corridor is the route we're trying to connect from Washington on the northern side of St. George into the top of Bluff Street so that you could bypass coming right down the boulevard and coming downtown. So it's been a road that's long planned even before the Desert Reserve was put in. That road has been planned and was part of the discussion even way back then as a master plan road that we need to be put in someday. And we've just been through red tape after red tape. And once it finally got approved and we were ready to go, then a lawsuit and an administrative action reversed the decision. And now we're back to square one, which some of the pushback or some of the alternative ideas was to make like the Boulevard or Tabernacle a one-way street.
Oh, goodness. Please no one-way street.
So you can see where it's like, again, the common sense ideas sometimes get thrown out because we're trying to maybe protect something that I understand needs protected, but we can do both. As humans, we're smart enough to do both. We really are. We can have win-win situations. We're really smart enough to save the desert tortoise and have a road. So same thing with like the graveyard wash. The permits were all in place. We're ready to go. And then it's, I think our latest was for whatever wetlands was there that you're now going to cover, you've got to mitigate that and provide some wetlands somewhere else. And so those things come along at the last minute. And it's usually just one little red tape after one little red tape after one little red tape. And so here we are. We've got the funding for it. And our running joke at City Council now is, when are we going to start? And our water department head, Scott Taylor, will be like, soon.
Tortoise speed.
Soon. Yeah. At the tortoise speed. So there are some things there that we really wish that there's just a little bit of a lack of common sense in some of that permitting process. Something I'm really familiar with as a cattle rancher. I deal with the BLM, all the time. Most of my cattle ranch is BLM permit. So I have to work with them, and I've learned a few tricks of the trade. So and sometimes it's really just sitting down and saying, hey, that's not going to work for us.
Yeah.
What can we do that will work for both of us?
Yeah.
If we're not willing to do that and we're just saying, hey, okay, whatever you say, we're never going to get done.
Right.
So we have to be able to negotiate and say, hey, this isn't going to work for us. What will work? So.
That's fair.
So last week we did some street interviews. We walked along the street and asked them. We couldn't get anybody to ask something on camera, unfortunately, not to, because we wanted to show a cool video of somebody saying, hey, here's this. And they're like, no, I don't want to be on camera. We're going to try again soon. But anyways, so we have a couple of questions just from them.
Okay.
Would you like to read them, or you want?
You read the first one.
I want me to read the first one. Okay. So we met a couple of business owners that have they have a business where they want to bring in conventions right into the area. So they said, we want to have conventions out here that several hundred people would come into the area, but flights are too expensive and there aren't enough hotel rooms. And there isn't any reasonably priced connecting flight from Las Vegas. Do you have any input or ideas on how to help us?
A couple of things. So we're talking about flights and hotel rooms. Great questions. We hear those a lot. So the airport, let's start there. The airport is owned and managed by the city of St. George. It is a regional airport, but the city is who runs that. Any flights that come in there or want to come in there are welcome. So a lot of times we get accused of we're only picking and choosing, but if there's a market for it, they're welcome to come to St. George. In fact, we'll actually give some incentive to try to get them to come. So we want more and more opportunity for people to fly in and out of St. George. I think coming soon is going to be a connection with Alaska Airlines. So to get us more into the Pacific Northwest. So yes, that's on the radar. We want to do that. And the current flights that we have going in and out of St. George right now, almost on all three of the partner airlines that are in there now, are 80% full, which is technically full. And so we're looking, hey, what else can we do to expand? And we lean heavily on our partner down there, SkyWest, which is the largest regional airline in the world, who's headquartered right here, to bring those in. Now, if somebody else wants to come in, they're welcome to. And it's going to be a long time, and this is the sad truth, but it's the truth. It's going to be a long time before we can be as cheap and as many flights as you get out of Las Vegas.
Sure.
That's an international airport, right? We're just not going to be there for a long time, if ever, just because Las Vegas is not that far away, and they just have so many more flights. So I hope that kind of answers that question. We're ready and willing. If somebody like an Allegiant or somebody wants to come in here, we'll help them. We'll accommodate them. And
So is there anything that can be done to like help the flights get cheaper, like just a little bit more affordable? Because they are pretty expensive.
I don't know how that would happen without subsidy, because it's a market driven thing. So
Right.
yeah, supply and demand. The demand is there. We are dealing with smaller airlines. They just can't. Now, every once in a while, when you can book an international flight and leave right out of St. George for as good. Every once in a while, for as good as you can by going to Las Vegas, if you get it early enough and if you're going to the right place. But I don't know, without the volume or the bigger airlines, I don't know that we're ever going to get as cheap as what you can get out of Las Vegas. Now, we are expanding. We're in the middle of planning the expansion of the airport, where we're going to have, we're going to have up to 7 gates with a second level, so we can have all sky bridges. So we'll have, I think it's 4 or 5 actual sky bridges where we can accommodate larger airplanes and more people. So we're planning for the future.
What's the timeline on that?
So we're in the planning stages now. That's probably going to be 2 years out.
Okay.
But the planning started now, including trying to find the money. For our latest estimate was about $90 million. So it's just money, right?
Yeah.
You just got to find the money for it. So that's from the flight standpoint. It's a market driven thing. If there's a market for it, we're encouraging the airlines to come. Our airport manager, Dustin, he goes to these conferences where he can speak with the airlines all the time. He's constantly showing the numbers. Hey, look at and our numbers are incredible for an airport of our size. Our numbers are incredible, and those airlines see it and they want to come. The second part of that is the hotel rooms.
Yeah.
And convention space. Right now, it's either the Dixie Center or
Black Desert.
Yeah, and now you have some at Black Desert. So we just approved the new Whitwer Hotel. It's going to go on the boulevard. That's going to have some convention space. Beautiful spot. Also in the works is our project down on our joint project down on 100 West, which will have. I just was in a meeting with them 2 days ago, where they're going to have a convention space of 6,000 square feet.
Oh.
So in that hotel, that's going to go there by Ancestor Square. So that's going to be another option, and more hotel rooms. So two major hotels that'll help with that. And we've always been very welcoming of hotels. Hotels are a big funding source for cities and really the state, because of the transient room tax, what they call the TRT tax. All those hotel rooms charge a tax that goes back to communities and counties and the state that help us fund our government, which helps keeps our property taxes low. So yeah, hotels are actually good for cities, and we like those. So we'll keep doing those as much as we need.
Yeah.
And I'm sure back as the flight with the flights, if you go back to flights, I'm sure as that price gap starts to narrow a little bit, then you'll probably have a lot more people going in and flying out of St. George, which will help bring the costs down even more.
Yeah.
I haven't flown out of St. George yet.
Yeah. Well, if it's just you and your spouse, or you and one person, it's good. But when I take my whole family, I have to go to Vegas, right? I mean, I have a bigger choice of flights, and I'm going to save, a couple $1,000s usually. If I take all 5 of my kids, we're going out of Vegas, and then it's worth the drive, because you're going to save a couple $1,000s, and you have nonstop and all that stuff. So you just have to do it. It's going to be, I'd be lying if I said there's a golden ticket there. It's just a market driven scenario where we got to have the market.
So kind of along those lines, one of the connecting questions with that was, why are there so many regulations on Airbnb in St. George?
That's actually another good question. So years ago, when the Airbnb became the big thing, we made the decision that we would handle it through zoning, like we do a lot of other real estate uses or land use decisions. And we started saying, okay, we've got a resort overlay zone, is what we call it. So any zone, any residential zone, we can put on this resort overlay, which then says, hey, you can have nightly rentals. And you got to manage them and do all those things, and we want it to be done right. But we do that, and that was our decision at the time. The council meeting that we had at the time, we said, hey, we need some community input. Uh, there were lines on both sides of the council chambers, clear out into the hallway. One of the biggest attended meetings I've ever been to.
Wow.
99% people saying, please do not open our neighborhoods to be hotels.
Mm.
So really, we're responding to what we felt like is the overwhelming
Majority
of the citizens saying, hey, why do we live in a neighborhood, not a hotel? Now, right during all that time, I had gone to San Diego, and we thought about staying in an Airbnb, and then we ended up staying in the hotel. Some friends had stayed in an Airbnb, and they said, yeah, we're driving down the road, and there were signs saying, you're not welcome here.
Oh my goodness.
This is a neighborhood. Neighborhoods are for neighbors and stuff like that. It was just starting in San Diego to where they were getting some pushback in some of the neighborhoods from people that were renting their houses in Airbnb. Also, we felt like there's some ramifications on the housing affordability if we allow people to buy homes and turn them into nightly rentals.
Sure.
Is it could create, especially in a resort type community like St. George, it could create even another place where we have a shortage. I don't think we have a shortage of Airbnbs in St. George, or in southern Utah, at least. We've created several areas that they can have them, and in our neighboring cities, there's less restrictions. Now, I will say we have put some thought into, and it may still happen, of opening it up a little more for those that are owner occupied Airbnbs. So where you live in your property and you want to rent a room or a casita out on a nightly basis, then you're there
Yeah.
to take care of the problems that may occur. That takes away the fear that we have from a lot of people, which were, hey, the house turned into a party house all weekend, and then the people leave and we're left cleaning up the mess.
Yeah.
And then every weekend it's the same thing. A bus pulls up, a baseball team shows up. It's a pool party every night, all night long,
Fair, yeah.
and then they leave. That was what we were kind of dealing with when we decided to do that.
Well, that seems like a fair middle ground.
Yeah, so we've kind of,
Yeah,
from a
that makes
property rights standpoint, which I'm a big property rights guy, you say, okay, if I live there and there's a complaint, then I'm there to take care of it. That may be an angle where we can take a look at it and say, okay, if you have plenty of places for them to park,
Mhm.
and you have a casita or something you want to rent out on a nightly basis, why not?
Yeah, that's right.
it makes sense. And I've owned Airbnbs, and sometimes you get some guests that are really respectful, and it's not an issue at all. And maybe they've got a family, or there's several family members, and even if it's a bigger family, and they're fine. And then there's the other ones that are like, we are here to party, and we're going to party all night long. We're in this resort, and they not realizing that, hey, we're in a neighborhood.
Yeah.
And if you wouldn't do that in your neighborhood.
Yeah.
And so I think there definitely needs to be a way of maybe policing that, but still respecting the property rights. And there can be a fine line there, and it can be a bit challenging.
And probably a majority of those Airbnbs, they are fine and there's not issues with them. It's just, we always have to focus on the ones that are the issues.
Right. Yeah, I remember in dispatch, we'd always get the noise complaints. You're just like,
Yeah.
there are people getting stabbed and they're complaining about parties.
Right. That's right. Right.
The music's a little loud.
Yeah.
I don't care about the stabbing victims,
Right.
but the music's a little loud, and I want that to be.
I don't like that kind of music anyways.
So being a small business owner in St. George, and also being on the Chamber of Commerce, like, it's a great place to start a business. What would you do to help those businesses thrive? Because it's kind of a roller coaster ride.
Yeah.
And it makes it really difficult for people to keep them alive, especially restaurants and retail.
Right.
So do you have a plan for that? And if so, what does that look like?
So two things. On the front end, we need to make it easy for people to come in and do that, not be so intimidating.
Mhm.
There's so many other things you have to do to start a business, and so many other things you have to worry about. The last thing you want to be able to do is run into a bunch of roadblocks, administrative roadblocks, like we were mentioning earlier about the federal government, that don't make sense. So, and I think we've done pretty good at St. George with that. We can probably always do better. So keep it easy for people to come in, get a business license, and get started. Then on the backside of that, we want to, the rising tide floats all boats. We want to create an atmosphere where we can be vibrant economically.
Mhm.
Part of that is what we've tried to do, like for projects like Switch or Tech Ridge. Uh, Tech Ridge, our idea there was to create some higher paying, higher wage
Mhm.
jobs, a place where higher wage jobs can thrive and businesses that bring in higher wage jobs can thrive, so that we can raise the kind of the economic picture in St. George, which then hopefully trickles down to all the other businesses. We see that in
Full income.
yeah, we see that in the construction industry because we're so construction heavy. When the construction is going well, all the small businesses, all the small contractors, all the people that do things that are related to contracting, from uh, porta potties to whatever there is out there for cleanup, even house cleaning, those businesses do better economically uh, when the building is going well. So, how do we create an atmosphere, an economic atmosphere that does that, that floats all those small businesses, that makes them thrive? Small restaurants, food trucks, people that are opening new restaurants. We got some cool restaurants in southern Utah that we want to keep busy.
Mhm.
That's all done if we keep the whole economic picture good. That goes back to some things that I've been involved heavily in, like taxes,
Mhm.
your real estate taxes. That's a big deal that we went through here in St. George. We have some of the lowest property taxes in the country and in the state, because we've worked hard at saying we can do more with less, and we don't. The first thing we do shouldn't be to go say, "Hey, let's raise taxes." Put another burden, because when we raise taxes, it raises on everybody, including the small business. If
Right.
you own the property, um, I'm there. I feel it.
Sure.
Anything that I do as a city council person is going to affect my own business,
Mhm.
and so I look at it through that lens. It's not all about being selfish, but it is saying, "Hey, I'm you. I'm one of you, and how is that going to affect me? And does that make sense?
Mhm.
Is the bang worth the buck, right?"
Yeah.
And so I do look at that. So again, I look at it from a rising tide floats all boats. We got to create that synergy in our economy so we can all thrive.
Yeah. So, just really quick along that same vein, one of the things that I think is imperative is maybe looking back at past policy and regulation and seeing like if it still fits and applies. For example, you mentioned food trucks.
Mhm.
They've got some pretty crazy rules on food trucks. Like you can't have stands outside on the property. Like it's just kind of silly, no seating. So it makes it really challenging. I actually was thinking of doing a food truck, and that was part of what stopped me. Do you guys look and review those
Yeah.
kind of policies and see if they still fit?
Mhm. And usually it's when someone like you or someone that's gonna do that sees that and brings it to our attention, because we don't always know.
No,
And
no.
we have modified greatly the food truck ordinance. A while back, there was a planned food truck court right over here on Bluff Street
Mhm.
that we made some major changes to that, because the person trying to do that, now they changed their mind, decided not to do it, so there's not a food truck court there. But because of their efforts, it is much easier now to have a food truck,
Okay.
and the regulations are much better. Are they perfect? No. And a lot of times, unless we have time to go back and review them, we're going to miss some of that stuff unless somebody brings it to us.
Okay.
We're working on some of that in our Title 10 right now, which has to do with accessory dwelling units,
Mhm.
which we are changing some of those rules because there's a lot of places where it just didn't fit. It was like, oh, you can't do this and you can't do that. Well, then how do I build a casita?
Mhm.
So we said, oh, well, you could if the rules said this. So we've changed a lot of those. We need to do the same thing with a lot of ordinances. Proactively, we would love to say we were doing all that, but most of the time it's when a good person that understands what's going on and sees an injustice brings it to us, and then we can fix it and then look like heroes.
Yeah.
So, but really, it does. Most of the good things that we do at the city. It's I shouldn't say it's sad to say, but it's just the reality, is because of concerned citizens that get together and come up with an idea, bring it to us, and we go, oh, duh,
Yeah.
let's fix that.
I love that.
And that's the way it should be. I mean,
Yeah.
we should, and people should feel free to come and say, hey, this doesn't make sense. Let's fix it. And then we can work through it. and fix it, hopefully.
Yeah,
And
for
we've done a
open-minded
lot of
council.
that. We've done a lot of that in the last couple of years. So yeah, do that
Yeah.
anytime you want to. So
We had some questions that were submitted that were had to do with affordable housing. And I'm part of the real estate investor group out here as well. And it's something that we discuss where people look at, okay, from an investor standpoint, how can we help solve affordable housing? Because you can't just like lower the price of houses, but there's still people out there who, have a 30, 40, 50,000 a year that just can't afford a full apartment or whatever. And so one of the questions that came through, and it's kind of a couple of parts to it, is one says, what about changing the ordinances to allow rental of an ADU without the owner living in the home? So their thought is, well, I've got this ADU and that's cheaper housing than an apartment, and then I can rent out the other house. And then another one is we have one of the investors is buying properties in Houston, and so one of the ways that they're helping is doing kind of a rent by room model, right?
yeah.
Where people come in and they're paying $800 a month or whatever, and it includes all utilities, internet, just everything, and they've got kind of a communal kitchen.
Yeah.
So their question is just to get your thoughts on those types of things. Are those valid solutions to consider for making housing more affordable?
So first thing I'll say is I don't believe that we will ever have the golden key to fixing that affordability as a government. If we go too far down that road, I'm afraid of what that's going to look like. I do understand that concept of the ADU. So part of our ADU ordinance is if you build that ADU and you need to live there to rent it out, right?
Mhm.
Here's the thought process there is if you don't, then what you've created is just a duplex or a triplex in a single family neighborhood.
Sure.
Because now an investor will come in and buy that because it's going to be a duplex or a triplex, which then as a real estate investor, that property is going to be more valuable because it's the income producing off that is now more valuable than it was as a single family residence. And so that's going to make the housing affordability problem worse because now that property value just went up even to where I can't afford it now because an investor can pay what the income production is going to be on all three units. Where if I'm living in one and then trying to rent the other two, maybe I can't make that happen. Does that make sense? I mean, the thought process is it's going to raise the value of that property even more and make the affordability problem even worse if we don't restrict it to owner occupied. By restricting it to owner occupied, it gives somebody an opportunity to go in there and then take the rental income from the other unit or units.
Mhm.
In downtown, we now allow for more than one ADU if it fits the setbacks and everything. You can have more than one ADU just in the downtown area for now, but that could change in the future. And so the thought process is that that would keep it from elevating the property prices even higher and making that affordability problem worse. So what can we do? Some of the things we can do are making sure impact fees don't get out of hand, making sure that we are giving opportunities for uh, builders to build properties that can be more affordable. I think there's going to have to be, in my mind, a little bit of a shift on what's required. Um, and I don't want to say this to be sound old fashioned or cheap, but back in the day, we used to say that we could have linoleum on the floors and we could have a Formica countertop for a starter home.
Ew.
Yeah, and I get that, but now our sites are up here, even the younger generation, and I get it. I like nice things, right? But how do we create a space where people can live, and then really that comes down to supply and demand. And so when we talk about growth and we talk about we're building all over, well, we're trying to meet the demand, really.
Sure.
Let's meet the demand. I have grown children who are now married that are struggling to be able to have a place to live.
Mhm.
Now, luckily, we've been able to make it work for the two that are now married. One, we just bought a house 3 months ago and we just got really lucky. And then our dad had to help. There's just no way around it. They just couldn't do it.
Right.
Right. And they had to stick with the 1,500 square foot house versus the 2,000 or the 2,500 in an older neighborhood. And, they're going to be able to remodel and they're going to be able to do some things down the road. And as their income increases, they're going to be able to do something. But it stresses me to see what they paid for that house, you know,
Yeah.
and I'm sitting there going, man, when I was that age, I could have never afforded. Of course, times are different, but I don't think the other thing we can do is back to the economy. We need to make sure that we have a vibrant enough economy so that they can make a living good enough to live here. It used to be that we always fought and said, "Hey, we're exporting all of our kids. Our biggest export is our children. We want to be able to create an economy here where they can stay here."
Mhm.
I'm one of those. I left. I moved to California to find my fortune, and didn't find it there, but I did make more money there. I mean, I got a company car. It was great, but I always wanted to be back home. Now our problem is, income has come up. There's a little more economic opportunity. Holy cow, you can't afford a house.
Yeah.
If you're, you're one of the lucky ones if you've been able to get into a house as a young person today. So,
So have you guys talked at all, because we mentioned this to Mayor Staley.
Mhm.
Have you talked at all about like doing smaller footprints for the homes, like a tiny home community where it's,
Higher density.
higher density, but they, have maybe a smaller lot. But they own their house. So, I mean, it's kind of gives that option to people who may not make as much.
so we actually approved a project over off of Dixie Drive with with a tiny home concept. The developer come back and kind of modified that. They just don't feel like it's something that's going to sell.
Mm.
But we have come way down. Look, I'm a big yard kind of guy, so it's been hard for me. But we've our lot size in a lot of our subdivision, we've allowed some clear down to the 5,000 square foot size. If you want just a smaller home. Um, we try to encourage builders to do some of that in their projects because they're always looking. Look, I get it. It's a free market. The builder wants to build what's going to be the best bang for their buck. Sometimes that's higher density. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's the McMansion, right? And so we've tried. Part of that's our master plan. Again, I know I'm going all over the board here, but part of that's our master plan too. Uh, it's okay to have some areas where there's smaller lots or apartments. We push really hard on the condo part of it because sometimes that can make it a little more affordable when you have the condos or the shared ownership model. A lot of builders don't like to do that because of the insurance ramifications. Uh, in our project down on the boulevard and on 100 West, I referred to earlier, there's going to be a component of for sale condos in there that are hopefully going to help some of that. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do. I don't know that unless we want to become really, I guess I would use the word socialist about it, which is, not using that in a negative way, but we'd have to be really heavy handed if we wanted to really, like things like rent control and price control, which we have so much open property around here. My idea is let's fix the demand problem by providing a good quality product and products that don't necessarily all fit into one box. The prevailing wisdom has been that nobody wants a house with a yard anymore. I don't think that's entirely true. And as they've surveyed this younger generation, yeah, they might want to start out in an apartment or or a small place, but the American dream still is my little place.
Huh.
Maybe not a great big yard, but a little place I can go out back, have a barbecue.
Kids can run around.
Yeah, I mean, I still
Safe.
think that's the American
Yeah.
dream. So we can't get caught up in that everything's a high-rise apartment,
Sure.
and nor do we have to think that everything's a McMansion, right?
Right.
So we've tried to promote a good product blend so that we can meet all those needs. And really, that's why we've tried to say, hey, we want to provide the water and the resources so that we can have the product or the homes that fill the need for that demand. So supply and demand.
Okay.
Hopefully that helps.
All right. Yes. Moving on to this upcoming election. What's your why? Why do you want to run?
So it goes back to my original when I signed up and decided to run for city council. If you see an
Those are
issue,
kids and
yeah, if you see an issue and you want to make a difference, there's all kinds of ways you can do it. And I'm not saying everybody to make a difference has to be on the city council. Everybody has to be the mayor. I just see I'm at a time in my life and a place in my life where I've got children. I'm almost to be an empty nester, so I got one in high school, and I've got the grandchildren, and I'm looking at it saying, I'm in a position where I can make a difference in my community. And this is my community. I take ownership of it, right? I love this place. I mean, it's who I'm at, who I am. I was born and raised here. I mean, it's just, you know, friends and family. It's just who I am. So if I have an opportunity to make a difference, and I think I can do some things better at the mayor position than being currently done, and I think now is a time when I have time to do it and I have the desire to do it, because that'll probably change because of other things I want to do in life. And so my why is that. And when I look at my children and what they're trying to do, I want them to be able to stay here. I want them to be able to live here, and they want to be able to stay here. So I want to do everything in my power to make sure that happens. And if they're going to live here, I want it to be safe. I want it to be economically vibrant, and I want them to be able to have opportunity into the future so that my grandkids can stay here as well.
You've mentioned a couple of times, and on other, you know, podcasts as well, that you would do things better. But what specifically are we talking? What would be better?
And that's the good question, because a lot of times they phrase the question as, "What will you do differently?" And sometimes we want to be different just to be different, just to be different for different sake.
That is one of the questions that we got from citizens. I
Yeah.
didn't ask that because I saw we already asked that several times.
So when you
But
say
you
what-
said better, so that's why I wanted to get into, well, what is it? What does that mean?
I'm naive enough to think that I'll do everything better.
Okay.
So, and it really is just a difference in how I do things. First and foremost, we need to create an atmosphere that doesn't contain the political element. Nobody likes politics. I don't consider myself a politician. I'm a mortician, right? I run a mortuary. I'm a citizen volunteer. So we need to create, too often, even today in our city, it gets really political. You know, there are things, if you make this decision, this ramification, or you're never going to be able to do this, or there's a little bit of an undertone of politics. I'm going to do away with that. No backdoor threats. No even hints of a threat. So we don't need that, especially in city government. It's a nonpartisan office. We don't declare what party we are. So why do we need to go down that road? That's first and foremost. We need to have an atmosphere where we can speak freely and get all the information, and nobody has to feel like they're going to get attacked for their decision. And we're not always going to agree, and that's okay. But we don't have to go away being disagreeable. So that's first and foremost. Secondly, I do have the time and the background and the knowledge to be able to do some of the things that maybe aren't getting done as good as I think they should be done. We talked about water. One of the things that you do get as the mayor of St. George is a seat on the Washington County Water Conservancy Board. That's super important. Super important. I have a background in agriculture. I know what it means to have water issues. I want to be involved in that discussion, and I think I can do that better than it's being done. Part of that's just showing up and being there. And I think our attendance there has been a little bit less than it should be. And that's not being negative. That's just saying we can do better. You can have good and still do better. So that's another area that I think we can do better. And really across the board, being present when we're needed, showing up. That's what the mayor does. You know, we've already talked about that earlier. The mayor doesn't necessarily vote or set the policy, but the mayor can have a good impact on that by being there and presenting St. George in a good light and negotiating for St. George when it's needed. And so I honestly feel like I can do a better job at that, and that I'm a more rounded candidate. Just my life experience we've talked about, from being a business owner to from my agriculture background with the ranching. I kind of got a wide gamut of experience that I think comes in handy when we think about the mayor's job. I can deal with the people that have been here forever. I can relate to them and their concerns. The people that have grown up here that see what's happening in St. George and just say, "Wait a second,"
Yeah.
I can walk them through where we're headed progress wise. At the same time, I know what it's like to come from California and see what we have here and say, "Oh, please don't lose what you have here." And I can see what we don't want to be. I lived there. I worked right downtown in LA. I used to make that 1 hour drive to go 10 miles, so I know what that's like. I know what traffic's like. Again, you don't have to have really bad. You can have good and still do a whole heck of a lot better. And that's what I think I'm going to bring to the table, is a whole lot better.
If you were to win this election, what would your top 3 priorities be?
They're going to stay what they've been on the city council largely. One is going to be public safety. We live in a beautiful place, great weather, all of that. None of that matters if it's not safe. None of that matters if it's not safe. The second thing is going to be water. That seat on the water board is very important, making sure we're heading in the right direction, changing the conversation a little bit about what we talked about earlier, conservation. And then thirdly is going to be infrastructure and transportation. That's a big challenge when you talk to people. I can't get out of my driveway and I want to drive here. And you guys have created this mess now that we have all these people here. We do have some barriers in St. George that make it hard for us to create good transportation corridors. We talk about the river and our mountains here. We've got to be forward thinking. I think there's a few places where we've dropped the ball just recently. Over off of in Devario, where we needed to finish the Gap Canyon Drive. And let's get into specifics, but I feel like we've always said the developers need to put those roads in before they go. Sometimes they're not meeting the criteria to have to do it yet. We should step in there and do that and spend our money there versus, sorry to say, on some other projects to beautify that maybe could have been spent better. Prioritization of where we spend our road funds is a big deal. And again, I wouldn't be making the votes on that, but the mayor does set the agenda and the mayor can guide that discussion in the right place. So I think that's a key. Those are my three big ones right there.
If we were to fast forward 3 or 4 years from now,
Mm-hmm.
and you've been mayor,
Mm-hmm.
how would you know that your term had been successful?
You would see a city council that would be able to freely talk with each other and welcome citizen input, and you would see a community that has not only grown, because we're going to grow, but is still as safe or safer than it was before that growth took place. And you might be driving around the outskirts of all the cities in Washington County, and everywhere you go is another reservoir. We need to have that water, right? We need to have that water storage. So, and then you would still be participating in these legacy events like the marathon, the rodeo, and some other things that we do here, Dixie Days, all those things. To me, that would be a success. When you can come into City Hall and feel like that you can talk freely, share your ideas, and that everybody is welcoming, and we can still walk away friends even if we don't agree, then I'll feel it's a success. So
You and Mayor Randall were fairly close in the primaries.
Mhm.
Why should people vote for you?
well, for the things we've talked about, I'm going to do everything a little better. I'm approachable. I'm the most well-rounded candidate from my experience standpoint. I understand the complexities of negotiating and working with those around us, even when we don't agree. And I'll show up. I'll be there when we need to be there. So that's my commitment, and that's what I think I've done on my tenure as a city council person. And I'm going to ramp that up as the mayor. It's going to be awesome. I'm just going to do it better.
Hey, any last things you want to add for the voters who watch this that maybe we didn't go over?
I'll just
Or your last 30 seconds?
I'll do my last pledge here, or my last pitch here. We have a chance to make history. We'll be able to elect St. George's first mortician mayor. So no, but
There's gonna be a Halloween sober.
right.
I guess we'd have to do next year, but
No, I'm so excited to be able to serve. This really is it's comes from the heart. I look at it as an opportunity to serve my community, and I want to be able to earn people's vote. I'm happy to talk to people one-on-one. I've tried to plaster my phone number everywhere. Call me. I want to earn their vote. Earn your vote. So
okay. All right. Well, thanks so much for tuning into this special episode of the Grindcast. To see the other interviews, head to southernutahvotes.com. Special thanks to all the sponsors for their help in making this happen. And if you want to learn more about the Grindcast, please be sure to like and subscribe. We interview entrepreneurs about how they got their start and their step-by-step path to success.
thank you.
Thanks so much for coming on here. We had a good time.
My pleasure.